Hello, fourth and fifth graders. Today I'm going to do a lesson on rounding numbers using the vertical number line. This is a review for you from the beginning of the school year when you were working on rounding. If you are a fourth grader, you rounded using whole numbers. And if you are a fifth grader, you rounded using decimal numbers. Today I'm going to focus on whole numbers, which will be a great review for both grades. So whether you're in fourth grade or if you're in fifth grade, this lesson is going to be helpful practicing rounding and also using the vertical number line, which provides a really great visual when you're rounding. So when you use the vertical number line, you always want to have your endpoints. So I'm going to label that endpoint. And an endpoint here, your upper endpoint, and then your midpoint, so the number in the middle. Okay, so the number that goes right in the middle is your midpoint. I'm going to start with just a review of how we find the midpoint, because that can be challenging for a lot of kids. So if I had endpoints 10 and 20, you just want to ask yourself, well, what number falls in between 10 and 20? And you would say to yourself, well, 15. So that is going to be your midpoint. Using numbers like this as a review from third grade, still beneficial to practice the skill. So the number in between 10 and 20 is 15. Now I'm going to make my lower endpoint 1,000 and my upper endpoint 2,000. So as we get into bigger numbers, you want to ask yourself, how many hundreds are in 1,000? So there are 10 hundreds in 1,000. And there are 20 hundreds in 2,000. That might help you when you're thinking about how you're going to find your midpoint. If there are 10 hundreds in 1,000 and there are 20 hundreds in 2,000, we know that there are 15 hundreds in the middle of those two numbers. So I'm going to write 15 hundreds here, and then I'm going to write it in standard form over here to show that that's my midpoint. Again, we're not doing any rounding just yet. We're still just working on trying to find the midpoint, because that's going to help you when you go to actually round some numbers. Okay, so let's try another one. So this time, my lower endpoint is going to be 31,000. And my upper endpoint is going to be 32,000. So first we want to figure out how many hundreds there are in 31,000. So you can think of it as 310 hundreds. And how many hundreds are there in 32,000? 320,000. Hundreds. Oh my goodness. 320 hundreds in 32,000. So now we can look at our uniform numbers and think what number comes in between 310 and 320. And that's when you would say to yourself, well, 315. So I'm going to write it in unit form over here, 315 hundreds. And then I'm going to write it in standard form on my vertical number line. So 31,500. If this strategy doesn't work for you, that's okay. You can just think, well, what number is going to come in between 31 and 32? And maybe you're able to already say 31,500. This is a different strategy. Both of them work as long as you're able to find that midpoint. So now we're actually going to go ahead and do some rounding. So I'm going to start with the number 4,100. And we're rounding it to the nearest thousand. And I wrote my number in brown up here so you can see it clearly. So let's go through the steps. So in the number 4,100, we're first going to ask ourselves how many thousands there are in 4,100. Oops, I don't want to use the brown one. 4 thousands. I'm going to write it in unit form, 4 thousandths, and then I'm going to write it in standard form for my endpoint, my lower endpoint. And then I'm going to say to myself, well, what's one more thousand than 4,000? 5,000. So one more thousand and 4,000 is 5,000. That's going to be my upper endpoint. And I can think of that as 5 thousandths. Okay, so we have our endpoints now. And now we want to find our midpoint, the number in the middle. So what number comes in between 4,000 and 5,000? Well, this is where your unit form can help you. 4 thousandths in between 5,000 is 4 thousandths 500. So 4 thousandths 5 hundredths. And I'm going to write that in standard form. So 4,500. Okay, so now I have my vertical number line set up. I have my endpoints. I have my midpoint. So now I'm ready to plot my number 4,100. Okay, so start at your lower endpoint, 4,000. So 4,100 would actually fall right here, right above it. Because here would be 4,100. Here would be 4,200, here would be 4,300, 4,400, 4,500. Okay? And you can see, this is where the vertical number line is great. You can see that 4,100 is much nearer to 4,000 than it is to 5,000. This would be a big, huge jump if you went up to 5,000. And also, we know that 4,100 is going to round to 4,000 because it falls beneath the midpoint. Okay, so if it falls beneath the midpoint, you're going to round down. If it falls above the midpoint, you're going to round up. So now, what if I change the number that we're rounding from 14,900 to 14,500? That I plotted there. So as you might notice, 14,500 actually happens to be our midpoint. Oops. Gotta get my vertical number line back all set up. Okay, here we go. So as you might see, 14,500 is in fact our midpoint. So we would plot it right here, right in the middle. And because it's right in the middle, that might confuse you. But in this case, you just follow the rule that if you're plotting and your number falls right on the midpoint, right in the middle, that's when you round up. It's become a convention or a rule. Our rule is just that you round up. So 14,500 rounds up to 15,000. That's just a little review about when your number that you plot is actually the same as the midpoint. All right, now we're going to do one more. Again, I need to erase. If you were to just erase everything, drawing a vertical number line is quite easy. You just draw your arrows, endpoints, midpoints, so 3 lines. Sometimes you might see it with a box over here for you to write the numbers. or even on the other side sometimes. Either way, it's just a place for you to write your endpoints and your midpoints. So why don't we round our last number today? We'll stick with the 14,000s, or 14,000. Oops. I wanted to do 14,345. All right, so there's my new number in brown. So let's start off asking ourselves how many thousands there are in 14,345. How many thousands are there in 14,345? So there are 14,000 and 14,345. And if we added one more thousand to 14,000, we'd get 15,000. And again, what is our midpoint? What number comes in between 14,000 and 15,000? 14,500. So looking at the number 14,345, we know that 14,100 would be right about here. 14,200 would be right around here. 14,300 would be right around there. So we can say 14,345 falls right around there. It doesn't have to be exact. It's a visual. You want to have it in the vicinity or as close as it can be. You want it to be, pretty close, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And again, I can see that 14,345 is going to round down to 14,000 because it's nearer to this number than it is to 15,000, and it falls below my midpoint. My midpoint is there to let you know that if it falls beneath 14,500 or below the midpoint, you round down. If it's above your midpoint, you're going to round up. Unless it falls right there in the middle, and then again you round up because that's the rule. But you can see that 14,345 is going to round down to 14,000. So I have created a little worksheet for you to practice, and you can submit it to your teacher. If you want, you can watch this video a couple times because it might help you to keep seeing the steps involved in rounding using the vertical number line. And for 5th graders, my next video, I will do the same thing and I will review how we use the vertical number line to round decimals. Thanks for watching. Bye.